Good morning, everyone. Less than 48 hours ago, I thought my work on the breakfast was done. The company I work for donates all the signage you see at Northwest Kidney Center's events, signs I usually make the weekend before, and by Tuesday I had everything staged up. The Sydneys were brought out of storage and set up to send out, and I was looking to come here this morning and just relax, catch up with old friends, have a nice breakfast, then go into work a little late, nice, relaxing, no pressure. Yeah. Well, I'm sure we would have really enjoyed hearing from Ben Rubeck, and I know we all wish him well. Like Ben, I've been on dialysis a long time, nearly 26 years. And some of the Breakfast of Hope regulars here today may remember me from a video that was shown in 2006, one of the earlier breakfasts. I'm the guy who dialyzes at home alone. The guy with the Australian Shepherd, the one who makes the signs, and the one who really loves to travel, and the man who likes to travel. And I still dialyze at home, but now I dialyze overnight while I sleep. And I still make signs. I still go to work every day. But now I'm looking forward to retiring in just a few short years. And I still have an Australian Shepherd. It's now my third. His name is Banjo. And I travel a lot. All of this while on dialysis. I never worried about my health when I was young. I didn't know anything about kidney disease at all until I woke up one morning at 22 years old with swollen ankles. That looked pretty awful, so I went to the doctor, and sure enough, I was retaining fluid because my kidneys weren't functioning properly. It was 1985, and I had just graduated from college with degrees in accounting and marketing. I'd moved to Seattle from Ellensburg, where I'd gone to school at Central Washington University, and I was starting to look for my first job after college, start a new career. But suddenly, my bright future, it came to a screeching halt. Over the next 3 years, doctors tried to stop the decline of my kidney function, but in 1988, I was ready for a transplant. My older brother, Jim, he flew out from Chicago. He was a good match, and we both went into the hospital, and I woke up with his kidney. At first, it seemed to be a big success. Kidney was functioning. But then the condition that originally caused my kidney disease came back and attacked the transplanted kidney. So to survive, it was time for me to start dialysis. In my mid-20s, single, with lots of good friends, lots of big plans, ways to make my mark on the world, travel the globe, I figured that now life tied to a dialysis machine was going to be a pretty miserable existence. Goodbye plans, goodbye life. I was angry and depressed. I say I entered into a kind of hoping it would rain mood. That way I wouldn't feel bad just staying inside all day. I didn't think I could work. I didn't want to do things really with my friends. And I sure didn't think I could travel around the world. I felt like every possibility that I thought life would offer was now closed off to me. At the end of the first few months on dialysis, I went home to Chicago from Seattle to spend Christmas with the family. While I was there, I went to a local dialysis center. I can't even remember which one now. And it just felt weird, though, to have strangers, people I had never met before, responsible for my care, putting needles into my arm. I mean, I guess I had gotten accustomed to the Northwest Kidney Center staff. And I'm sure I was far from their favorite patient at the time. I wouldn't be up here talking to you. I was angry and depressed. But when I got home, the Northwest Kidney Center staff listened to my story and said, you can put in your own needles, which sounded crazy. But they did not take no for an answer. They were persistent. And, I learned to do it. Looking back, That was the key, I think, to leading me out of that dark time. If I could get engaged in my own treatment, if I could take some responsibility, some control over this disease that seemed to take everything from me, then maybe, just maybe, my existence wouldn't have to be so miserable after all. Pretty soon, a couple of years, I had to admit that I was feeling okay on dialysis. I was feeling okay about myself too. It was time to see how far I could take this. In 1994, I made some New Year's resolutions. I'd spend 10% of every day outside. I'd play 50 rounds of golf during the year. I would spend 35 nights sleeping on the ground, camping. That's the idea. That year, early in the spring of that year, a National Geographic came, and inside of it, it had one of those big pull-out maps, of the United States. I forget what the article was, but I put that map up on my wall, and I began charting a road trip, finding dialysis units I could visit, and going around the country. My dog Brainy, Australian Shepherd, and I set off later that year, and together we traveled 17,000 miles and visited 22 states in Mexico. Over the next, it was 40 days. Sometimes we slept outside, in a tent usually. Sometimes we slept in the car, and sometimes we felt like it was a road rally as I raced to get to the next unit in time for my treatment 3 times a week. But by the time we got home, 40 days later, I had left my depression behind. Left it somewhere on the road, on Route 66 outside Winslow, Arizona. Time to take it easy, as the Eagles sing. I went to Burning Man later that year. Me and 2 friends and about 4,000 other people. It didn't really make me feel special to be at Burning Man. It made me feel normal. I was doing an adventure. I was having an adventure, something I imagined I would have when I was in college. 15 years later, I went back to Burning Man, and there were 50,000 people there. Whoa, yeah. So I also started a career that next year, working a union job with a company that sets up trade shows. And I eventually learned to become a sign maker. That's when I started making signs for the Northwest Kidney Centers. I think I've made I've made over 4,000 signs now for the Northwest Kidney Centers, including our good friend Sydney, who you saw coming up the escalators this morning. That's also when I started thinking about giving back to the organization that helped me through some of my darkest hours. At the Northwest Kidney Centers, they know that having to use dialysis does not mean you have to stop living. The staff knew I could thrive because they had seen so many other people thrive before me, people like Nancy, who you saw in the video. They believed in me even before I believed in myself. My relationship with the Northwest Kidney Centers during the past 20 years has been deep and central to my life. I've connected not only as a patient, but as a partner in advancing their mission. I received the Clyde Shields Award in 2005, the highest volunteer honor the organization gives, and I have chaired the Board of Trustees, the first board leader on dialysis. In 2006, I had the honor of asking for the very first donations to establish a new kidney research institute, a collaboration that has grown into a stellar success in advancing critical research that we need to fight this disease. Most recently, in honor of my 25 years on dialysis, a conference room in Northwest Kidney Center's home dialysis training center was named in my honor. But back to my traveling days. After that first cross-country trip, I took my first trip to Europe just 2 years later, and I spent 2 months there doing the whole Rick Steves Euro-Rail Pass. In the past 20 years, I've traveled to 34 countries and dialyzed in 23 of them. I've been to New Zealand, the Netherlands, Costa Rica, Czech Republic, Honduras, throughout the Caribbean, Singapore, and many others. The coolest center I've ever been to, no offense, Northwest Kidney Centers, was in Cairns, Australia. It was on the 10th floor of the tallest non-hotel building in the city, with dialysis chairs facing floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out on the Great Barrier Reef. It's the only center, in all the centers I've been to, it's the only center that had binoculars so you could use them during dialysis. I've certainly been in bare bones centers. I call them low amenity environments. The one in South Africa had peacocks wandering outside the open door. And while the treatments and the machines are the same, the cultures are very different. Like Rick Steves, I see them as a back door into the country you're visiting. For gourmet meals in France, with wine, of course, really. And in Australia, foot or face massages during treatment. Seriously, so it's quite nice. Your money tonight. But through all the years and miles in all the countries, my biggest travel challenge came right here at home in the United States. I'd always told people that I could travel the world. I could go on safari in Africa while using dialysis, but I couldn't raft the Grand Canyon, for instance. There were limits. On safari, you can head to a dialysis center after you've spent a couple days spying on elephants and giraffes, go into town, do your dialysis. But on a rafting trip down the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon, there are no towns. There's no dialysis units. There's nothing there but water and desert and spectacular beauty. I so wanted to go. It's always just been something in my life, attraction to me. But it seemed an impossible dream. It just didn't seem like it. There's just no way to do it. But I kept thinking about it. And I'd been on rafting trips before, and then I had a transportable machine, and I took that down a rafting trip. And it demonstrated that those early rafting trips with the machine showed that the machine could go through whitewater, could keep working after that was over. But machines need electricity, right? And if I rafted the Grand Canyon in a wilderness area, everything you take in, you have to take out. I didn't need a generator. I would need, all the camping equipment you need, everything, all the food we're going to eat for the whole group, not just for me, but it's just, I didn't even know if the logistics would work, and I wasn't even sure the National Park Service would allow this to take place in a wilderness, designated wilderness. So, in 2012, I emailed the director of the National Park Service in Washington, D.C., and asked him. It's not that I intended to start at the very top, but his was the only email address I could find online. So, and, well, he emailed me back within about an hour. And the next thing I knew, he was emailing me and the person in charge of approving excursions at the Grand Canyon. And then the next day, she called me and spent about 45 minutes trying to talk me out of the idea of taking my dialysis machine down the Grand Canyon. But ultimately, our national parks want these treasures to be seen. They want them to be accessible to every visitor. And she put me in touch with an outfitter who, when I said what I wanted to do, they said, hell yes. It's kind of the way rafters are, apparently. Arizona Raft Adventures wasn't sure how we would do it, but they were willing to try their best to make this trip happen. For 8 days in July 2013, not the ideal time to be in the desert in Arizona, I traveled 225 miles on a raft down the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon. It had its challenges. There were windstorms, 120-degree heat. We were even hailed on. Really nothing like getting pelted with ice while you're trying to switch back your way down a cliff. But it was awesome. I drank a can of champagne. No glass is allowed in the Grand Canyon. On the 4th of July. I was toasting America's independence, but I was also toasting my own. River rafting is a lot like life. Sometimes the water is so smooth and peaceful, it's almost boring. It's repetitive. But if you pay attention, every moment is beautiful. Every part of it is amazing. You might think you can just float through it in the river or life and let that carry you along. But you have to pay attention. You have to make your own path. And when there's an obstacle in front of you, or when the water churns so hard and everything seems so chaotic, and you think you're going to flip over and be lost forever, don't give up. Find a way. Because life is what you make of it. I wish you an equal share of smooth waters and exhilarating rapids for all the rest of your days. Thank you.